What's going on, guys? And welcome back to another episode of Stereotherapy. I'm your host, Lisa, and of course, we've got Justine right here with me. If you're new here, this is the show that showcases the importance of music and mental health. Remember, if you want to help support our little show, all you have to do is leave a positive rating or review on any app you are currently listening to this right now. We would really appreciate it a lot, and it would mean a lot. You can also hit the follow button and subscribe to our show so you never miss a new episode. They go up every Tuesday. We won't send you a barrage of emails, anything like that. It'll just say, hey, there's an episode, and who knows, you may like it. So go ahead and do that again. It would mean a lot. And now that we've got that little spiel out of the way, today we're going to be celebrating our favorite records that are turning 20 this year. And we're so excited to do this like we did last time with the 2003 ones. But this is a pretty good list. But then I'm finding when I gave it to Justine that like there's some that like she didn't like as much. So it'll be interesting to hear our takes. But we're really excited. So if we don't cover some this time, we'll do another episode to fill in that. But Justine, I personally know it's been a week for you. How are you doing today? What's going on with you?
I'm not gonna lie, mental health is not doing great.
Mhm.
And in turn, like my physical health kind of, really roughing it as well. So you know, I'm getting through it, but I'm
Yeah.
here. I'm
I'm
ready to talk about good music. So
I'm glad you're here because ah, like we won't get personal with it, but I just know you're going through a lot and I love you so much and I hate being so far away and that aspect. My mental health has been really kind of shitty too. I'm just going to say it. Not for the same reasons as you. And it's going to sound kind of silly, but I'm just going to be open because I've said it a couple things to people like in a little rants on social media, but like I love this podcast, right? Like we love it and I love doing it and I love creating. But I would not be truthful if I didn't say, like, when I saw that, like, we got a 1 star rating, and it's not about the numbers, right? It's not legitimately. I know people say, yeah, right. But, like, we work so hard on this podcast together. When we're not putting out a episode, I'm learning how to edit. I spent like 4 hours the other day learning how to edit and match volumes because sometimes your guests are lower on Zoom. It just is life. It happens. But literally, I spent 4 hours and then I figured it out and I was so proud of myself. And then I see the 1 star. And like, look, are we a 5 star? No. But like, are we a 1 star? Also, no. And it just really like hit me.
I I think the thing is when people are rating, I don't think they understand that like if you're gonna rate something really low,
Hmm.
okay, like you can't do that and not leave comments.
Right. Right.
Because you can't grow and fix things if you don't explain why you are seeing this as a 1 star. And again, like it's not about the ratings and everything, but at the same time, like we want to be able to fix anything that we can possibly do. And we want to grow from, anything that we can. And we can't do that if you don't like explicitly tell us why you're rating it so low. And I feel like that's with anything in general, including
Yeah.
my personal situation right now. If somebody can't fix something if you
Hmm.
don't explain why.
Yeah. And it just is annoying because it's like, again, I know the issues. I don't like try not to start on a negative note, but I'll just be honest. Like, it
No,
hit me where it's like, as a
it's okay.
creative, and I know it's part of putting yourself out there. And as a creative, you work so damn hard. And then when someone does that, and it was just like, dude, the episode that we just put out, had I just put it out how it was, it would have been, and no disrespect to our guests, it wouldn't have sounded good because everybody's lower, just as how it is with Zoom. But like, I spend so much time learning, constantly learning everything and researching guests and doing all this. And it just really made me mad. And like in a thing, but then,
Well, I think too, like as much as we talk about how both of us like have a lot of anxiety and we overthink things. So like
Mhm.
if you don't explain it, we're like, okay, wait, what was so bad? So
Yeah.
it kind of will send us spiraling because we're like, wait, which aspect of it is that bad for you?
But then I had to sit and think too, you know what? for that 1 star, we have so many incredible people that listen to this thing week after week that support us, and that's what counts. And that's what I'm focusing on. But I'll be honest, this past week, I was just like fuck. Like I was so mad. But whatever. You know what? It is what it is. So I'm better because we get to talk about some really good music. And I know people are excited about this. So I know that people will enjoy this one. But yeah, like just being a creative. And I'll say I listened to back Kaylee Goldsworthy's episode a lot this week and the things she said and just things to keep in perspective. So yeah. Sorry to be a downer, but we're going to have a really good episode. But I have to just say, like, yeah. And I think it's real for us to be open about that. Like, sometimes our mental health is
Yeah.
shit too. And we're on here and we're talking about music and mental health and we enjoy
Yeah.
it. But sometimes, like, be real. Like,
Well, that's
this
the
week fucking
thing. Like
sucked.
the part of like breaking the stigma is talking about when you are having lows.
Yeah.
And we both have discussed like everything that we personally struggle with. So like if we were to fake it, like how is that going to help anybody? So it just goes to show you like I can especially say this past week has been the lowest I've been in a very long time. So if I was to lie, I mean, I think everybody would probably hear a little bit in my inflection, probably the
Mm-hmm.
next couple like episodes that something was going on. But like, what's the point in lying? Like, why would we have this podcast if we were just to pretend to be happy all the time?
Mm-hmm. And that's why I love you, Justine. You always put it real. That's why we had our fun little date. Justine is good right now, I would say, as far as like us together right now, because we had a really good Zoom, just fun time the other day, which I was so happy with.
Yeah.
And like I adore you. So like I'm glad that you're here. And again, want everyone to know Justine wanted to power through because I told her she could take a break too. Like she does not have to power through this. So it's a good distraction. So again, by you listening to this, you're giving Justine a good distraction. So I appreciate that because I'm a mama bear when it comes to Justine. So um, but yeah, I mean, so with this episode, like it's wild that we're going to dive into these records. And if you clicked on it, you already know what records we're talking about. And if you saw the promo I put out before, I totally changed it because I realized I was a little psycho with doing 5 records. So we're not doing 5 records because that would be insane. So those records will be in the next one. Don't worry. But just really excited because like we're diving into these records and that means I turned 20 this year. A lot of them are in the summer and fall of 2004 when they came out. But I just feel like it's like these records just came out yesterday. And it's just awesome to go back. And I guess the first record we're gonna dive in, and it's one we both love. Well, all three of these we like. I know we were a little indifferent on the
Mhm.
used, but like for three, Cheers for Sweet
Well,
Revenge.
it's still, still here.
Exactly. With Three Cheers for Sweet Revenge, obviously my chem. And honestly, this was the record when I put up, hey, what's your favorite? The majority said this one out of all the ones. Yeah, I mean, this record came out in 2004 in June, if we're being specific. But although like they had, You Brought Me Bullets, I feel this was the introduction to my chem, at least for so many around
For
me.
most people.
It absolutely was. And I'm like, I'm not okay was everywhere. You could possibly be that summer. And I remember going to Sam Goody to get the CD. I mean, I'm dating myself right there. But I also remember like 2004 Warped Tour, they were on that small, tiny stage. And by 2005, they were headlining it on the big stage. And it just seems like everybody under the sun wanted to see this band, be around this band. And I remember just be completely smashed in the Warped Tour crowd in 2005 and having to get out because like people were just going insane for this band. And I know it
Mhm.
was this record that made that. And it's like hearing this record, I knew they would be this big thing. And I feel like I know I said this many times, but they're just that band that can't be lumped in any category, whether it's punk, goth, hardcore. They are just simply my chem. And there's nothing else to be said about them. I mean, on this record, when you look at it, they open up with Helena. And I feel like it's so fitting for this record and setting the theme of the cover art and just the theme of the record. and obviously the music video. But I mean, I just remember hearing that opening track and like, this is for me, that angsty kid I was. And although Helena isn't my top favorite track, and I'll say that just because like I feel everybody says that, and you know me, like I have to be different, even though like I still love it, but I guess I would say like as a kid teen, I just felt so instantly cool listening to this record, as weird as that sounds. But I just think people also have to remember, right? Like back in 2004, you were probably made fun of for listening to stuff like this. But this was not like the cool thing like it is now, like you see on TikTok and everything, and the aesthetic of being an, I guess, quote unquote, emo kid. You were being made fun of like 100% for listening to anything like this. And their music videos were just so good and pure art, and it makes sense. But I really sank my teeth back into this record because I really wanted to highlight it with us talking about it. And I feel so many talk about the Black Parade record, but this was my favorite era. And like, honestly, also the Danger Days one that everybody shits on, but whatever. I don't care. It's so good. But my highlight tracks for this record, Give 'em Hell Kid, because that opening was just something that still grabs me, and how Gerard just comes in so fiercely. I'm not okay because come on, this was the song and everybody's MySpace profiles back then. And it's just so, so good. And I remember this music video and them sitting on the steps, and it just is so good. Uh, the
You gonna quote
chat.
it?
Oh my God. I was like, no, I almost was. I was like, oh my God. And if anyone knows, like, we legitimately have talked about doing a promo like that, but I can't figure out how to do it. But it'll come one day. I'll just do it. The Jet Set Life is going to kill you. Again, this song just sounds so different, and it's still go to for me. And honestly, my favorite part of the song is I try not to butcher this because I love this and I always sing this part, but it's where Gerard's like, you check into the Hotel de la Muerte. Um, Now that I've butchered that, and like someone probably shut this off right now, but that is my favorite part of that song. And I love that song. My Spanish teachers are going to kill me because I've taken like 4 years of Spanish, but probably just embarrass myself, but I don't care. I love that song. That's like my favorite part of the whole thing. Cemetery Drive. Bring it back, Lisa. Bring it back. This song just makes me so happy whenever I would see it live. And again, that theme of death was just something as a teen we all liked for some odd reason. Maybe we still do now. But live, this one just hit. And I think that's why I had to put it as one of my favorites. But again, this record just stuck with me. And I love the outfits and the theme and just everything about this record. And I think if you were going to stack this record from this time and a bunch of them, this one would be on a Mount Rushmore of the emo 2000s, early 2000s, and what it represented. And Justine, I gotta know, because you're a huge My Chem fan. We obviously
Yeah.
have our My Chem episode. For you, what about this record? Like, I gotta know.
So I believe that I found this about this album specifically through like a magazine.
Mhm.
It's hard to keep track anymore. Like
No,
I
I
have like my
know.
same like reasons how I found bands back then, but I think it was through a magazine how they looked. Their looks from this era just really knew how to pull me in as a spooky goth girl. And like even when I talked about how big they were for me to my boyfriend Tim, and he was like, "Oh, that makes total sense why this would be out of all the emo bands your favorite, because
Yeah.
they're like the gothiest version
Yep.
out of most of them." So he was like, "That totally makes sense for you." Um, the music videos are just so beautifully done, which I still feel to this day are some of the best music videos that there are out there.
100% agree with you on that.
But I mean, not even just for this album, just like any Mike
Mhm.
Kim music videos were always done just to complete perfection. It was seen more as like almost like a little film than it was just like, a video to a song. Every one of their music videos have always been great, but this era of them were just so like just so beautifully done. Like, because I mean, I want to say gothy, but like, so are the Black Parade ones, obviously.
Mhm.
But what if my absolute favorite songs from this album has always been "To the End"?
Mhm.
When I was younger, I always wanted to have it played at my wedding. I don't know if that will come to fruition or not. We'll
It
see.
better, Justine.
I don't know how we'd piece it in there, but Um, I also just really love Thank You for the Venom,
Yeah.
with lines like, I'm just the way the doctor made me, and what's life like bleeding on the floor, and if this is what you want, then fire it will. It just really hit my teenage kid's self who felt left out and out of place, and but was a people pleaser inside my heart. Um, just the whole album as a whole is wonderful, but these two songs in particular just were the just straight to my heart, and just to this day, that or those are two songs that I listen to still on playlists and stuff.
No, like you nailed it too, because I even had to go through and remember that The Ghost of You was on this record because
Yeah.
I thought that for sure was Black Parade. I don't know how, but it's just I don't
No,
really
yeah.
fit. But it's like you're talking about the music videos because I think of that about that one specifically. And just like you knew you were getting a band, and obviously you knowing Gerard Way did go to art school and what he's done with
Yeah.
oh my God, the Umbrella
It definitely
Academy.
shines.
It
Yeah.
it definitely, and I think like it's just they were such a league of their own. They still are, and I wish this was the record at when we were young. Not that I'm going because it's just I don't know, who knows, maybe, but I wish it
Fingers
was this.
crossed.
I wish it was this freaking record. It's so like diving back into it before we recorded was a lot of fun because I was instantly transported back to when I was younger and like all into it. And I think it's only fitting though, if we're gonna talk, well, before we do that, I gotta say, if you love this record or any of these records, say hi to us on our socials. We're at stereo.therapy on all of them and let us know because I would love your takes because we want to hear them. But again, if it's only fitting, if we're gonna talk about Mike Hem, we gotta just go into our next record, The Used in Love and Death because I feel these two bands, specifically during this era, went together. And I know their friendship, which I hope is still there. I don't know. I've heard some things, but um, we have to go into The Used in Love and Death. And Justine, I know we've talked a little bit about it. And I remember you even saying like a little bit of your thoughts, but like, what are
Yeah.
your thoughts on In Love and Death and around that time? All that good stuff because I want to know because I think we're gonna have a different take on this record.
But maybe just a tinge, but not
Yeah.
like
Oh no,
not like
nothing crazy.
crazy different.
No,
Um
no.
so I was a huge fan of their first debut album that came out. So
Hmm.
I was very excited for this album. So I was ready, I'm prepared for this album to come out. I still stand by personally though that the first one is their best, but I still did love this album. I think one of the biggest things for me that maybe is why the first album for me is more personally hitting is just because this one's definitely revolves more about love.
You know what? Okay, so that's so
And I
funny. Like
think that's why.
that's probably so yeah, when I go into why
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
exactly. I'm like,
So, and
yep.
during this time era in my life, I was not about being romantic and lovey because I didn't have that. So, like, it was like, it was kind of like the opposite. I was like, I wanted things dark. I wanted things
Yeah.
that talked about, why love wasn't great and stuff like that because I didn't have it. So, like, I think that's why this album in particular didn't land as hard for me as it did for a lot of people, but I still liked it. I really loved all that I got.
Hmm.
For me, the lyrics I personally took as not having the reactions that people think you should be having in a certain time, with lyrics like "so deep it didn't even bleed." I'll be just fine pretending I'm not. And as a girl who's had to mask and deal with alexithymia, which is when you can't understand what feelings you need to be feeling, I related to it like that. And of course, under pressure for
Mm-hmm.
me, because if you know me, you know I am a huge Queen and David Bowie fan. So having Gerard and Bert sing this was a dream for me. Um, but I mean, the album as a whole is pretty good. Again, like just I think the themes that I hit on is the reason why I didn't take it as huge as other people did. But it's still a really good, solid album for sure.
No, it is. And it's so funny you said that because as I was listening to this record, I was just reminded of a time when I was in such a that teenage like love thing and just being and I was also a huge Used fan. I'm very jealous of anyone that gets to see this record because it's been a hot minute. I have seen them do it before. And
Yeah.
I think that's why it's also with the when we were young and knowing how expensive it is. And I'm kind of like, it'll be like $1,000 day. And you know there's overlap and you know they're not going to get through all of these records in the slots they're going to have. There's no way, especially Coheed, there's a lot of records that are more time and there's just no way. And I don't know, not being negative about it because I would love to go, but it's just is again, it's amazing, but I'm hoping somehow, I don't know, there'll be recordings or whatever of it because I would love to see it because I literally loved this record. I remember being a waitress at Chili's back in the day, but a lot of people that worked there had similar music than me. So sometimes on our break, we would go out to our cars and listen. And this was a record that was always in. And it was just so huge for me at that time. And again, it came out in fall of 2004, which makes sense when you listen to the themes of this record. But it opens up with Take It Away, which, come on, like as an opener track, you really can't get anything better than that. And I think, I mean, they even have like the one lyric where it's like, and I lost all doubt in a chemical romance. And I know that's because them and my chem were like this, and I'm hoping that things were mended somehow. I don't know, because that would be amazing for them to
Yeah.
come together for Under Pressure. That would be amazing to hear that and
Well,
see
I
that.
saw an interview recently, I believe, with Bert, and he was saying that he would love to make that happen.
Okay.
So I'm curious if
Well,
they managed to pull that out.
well, that would be amazing and that would be worth
Yeah.
it, everybody. But I was a huge also just like I think this record was just everywhere. And I mean, so many people either really adored it or were like, eh. For me, it was just being that angsty teen. And I was super into guys that looked like Burt McCracken at the time. I'm not gonna like, I don't care. Like, I've always been into guys like that. Which is wild if people look at me now. But I was just super, so that's what drew me to the Used. And I'll say I was a teenager in a teenage band crush. Uh, but I was just super into that. It made me just dive further into the Used. And I'm just laughing
Uh,
at my teenage
Off
self.
topic though, do you remember the t-shirt they had out around then where it was like making fun of that Jesus shirt where it was like Jesus
Yes.
is my homeboy, but it was
Uh,
like Bert is my homeboy?
so it's so funny because one, I had that shirt, and I also had the Pete Wentz is my homeboy because Fall Out Boy. I had that shirt too. So I had both of those, and it just I don't know. Like I think it's amazing to go back and listen to these records again because again, it wasn't this cool thing it is now with the countless influencers around and it just was I felt like the
It's different.
Used was that band for the misfits, quote unquote. And I think when you look at some people that have really, really loved this band or this record, it makes sense versus some people, including my fiance, that's like, I never was a Used guy. I'm like, well, yeah, I could have told you that. And not in a mean way, but like, like just certain people that I feel
Yeah.
gravitated towards them and this record. And I just think that it's amazing that we're loving the revival. And I'm sure it just proves that it wasn't a phase. And these records are standing the test of time and how this music was so special. And for us in the quote unquote misunderstood kids. And I guess the Used just again really represented that. And for me, I just loved this record. And maybe it was I was just warm and fuzzy. I was in art school. I was having crushes on people. And like I don't know. I was just in the mood. But I caught fire. So many memories with it, including again the crushes I had around me, but I would never speak on. But it made me feel warm and fuzzy. Let It Bleed. I just love the overall tone of this one. And I'm not even talking about the lyrics, but musically, it was just something that caught me. And again, a lot of my favorite things and songs are from watching this band live. And I remember when this record came out and seeing the Used a lot and having that attachment. All That I've Got is another one, like much like you just seen, where it's like, Far From Lonely. And it's like one of those things, and it was a different one. And I guess that quote unquote emo kid in me or whatever. But I just was so attached to this song. And I can't tell you how many moments I had while listening to this song, whether it was with friends or on my own or just being lonely. This song was always
Mhm.
on, and it still
Yeah.
is. And I loved the music video for it too. Sound effects and over dramatics. I loved this one so much, whether it was the arrangement or just how it was live. It was just so, so good. And I hope that they get to play this one when we were young. And I know people are gonna say, "Oh, of course they are," but like I said, I don't think it's gonna be the whole album. I think it's gonna be songs from the record or as many as they can fit in their time slot. Um, because I still don't believe they're going to pull it off, but maybe I'm wrong. But I like how this song would go from calm to just mayhem. And I think that's what I loved about the Used and this record is there were moments of that and you heard Bert's voice. And I think that's what a lot of people, if you weren't into that rough screaming, especially on this song, you didn't like it. You just weren't a fan. But I gotta go with, of course. I feel like almost everybody's favorite is I'm a Fake because I mean, come on, that opening part, which I'm trying to learn it because I would love to do like some kind of fun promo with it and like get people to stitch it and see if they can do it too. Because when people talk about their national anthem, I swear that opening of I Am a Fake was every single one of us that liked it you were singing that part or whatever it was. And I know even being a girl, I was like, this is my angst. Like, this is my favorite track on the record. And if I could hear one song, it would be this. I want to hear I Am a Fake. I want to hear that opening monologue. I want to do it. Lyrics, questionable, but I wanted to hear it. Uh, this record just screams my youth and it just being around the city in Chicago and finding my own friends in the scene and just again being in love with guys like Burt McCracken. And it just is. And I love this record. And of course, like there's songs like Lunacy Fringe and things that are very different. And I think that's what the Used tried to always do is be a little different. Even on their record that came after it. I didn't always agree with everything on this record, but it's such an important record and the Used is in general and it just I also love how now too watching the Used like Bert is so uh happy and just he's in
Mhm.
such a better place and I
Oh, you
love
can
to
definitely
see
tell.
that and I would love to see them live now, right? Because when I saw them it wasn't always and I would just
Yeah.
again if you love this record, hate this record, let us know because again like
I'm
just
definitely thankful in that fact that I've seen them back in the day, I think a couple times. And then I saw them in, oh man, what was it 2019? It might have been 2019 that I got to see them again at this like that weird, remember that weird festival I talked about
yeah,
before where it's Circa and like Thrice and
yeah,
you
thrice, yeah.
and yeah, and you can tell that way. Like, I love how I got to see like both sides. I got to see
Hmm.
him when he was really like and his years of struggle and then seeing him more healthy. And both times I got to tell you, like, no matter who, whether when he was struggling or not, he puts on such a good show, but you can tell how much happier he is now.
Yes. And like literally that's what I think is so cool about this revival in these bands is you've seen them go through a lot of shit. And even when they were the most popular band, in the scene, and even now they're still, I mean, these bands are still killing it 20 years later. We're still talking about them. But the fact that like a lot of them are in such a better place it just is amazing to see. And I, 10 out of 10, I love Bert McCracken. I would love to have him on this podcast. I love him. And that I'm going to stop sounding like weird about it. But anyways, if you love the used, like he was like one of my first loves. But, in like the most teenage girl emo crush way. Um, uh, but we're gonna do one more record because again, we're gonna do more records next time. But this is a record that I'm really excited to talk about because this is one I've had many arguments in my house that I said it was better. The sophomore record was better than the freshman record. And we're talking Taking You Back Sunday, Where You Want to Be. And I have had this is continuously, I have said this is one of my top Taking Back Sunday records, and one of those situations that, again, I felt the sophomore release was not a sophomore slump. It was better than the OG release, Tell All Your Friends. And people have fought me like crazy over this. And I understand. I love
And
Tell All Your
it's
Friends.
funny too, because like we talked about this before and you were saying that, and I was like, it's really weird because for me, it was the opposite where I'm from. People gravitated more towards this one than they did their debut album. So it's just so
Yeah.
funny.
So
Sometimes it definitely depends, I think, sometimes too, where you live at.
maybe, because I don't know. Like, it was just like I love Tell All Your Friends, but this one just I don't know. Like I said, I've had many conversations. Friends get on me about that. They're like, no, wait. I'm like, hear me out. Just hear me out. Maybe you'll feel differently after we talk about this one. But obviously it was the debut of Fred Mascherino, who plays John Nolan. And I think that Taking Back Sunday was on the verge of being so huge, right? Tell All Your Friends came out. Everyone's like, oh my God, talking about them. Absolute Punk, Absolute Press, Rolling Stone, all those magazines. It was like, oh shit, like there's a lineup change here. What are they going to do? And I really love the era of Fred Mascherino. I think he was fantastic with Adam's vocals. I love the sound of this record. And I just think this release was one of those things that they knew that they had to come out with something. Tell All Your Friends was huge. It was massive. It was explosive. And then whatever their sophomore CD was going to be, which a lot of people sometimes go away from, right? And they compare. And this one just delivered on so many things. And I think this record opens up with set phasers to stun. And which I think, again, all these records had these killer opening tracks to just grab and pull you in. And I remember seeing them on Warp shortly after this release. And again, one of the biggest crowds. And I feel this release, again, just really catapulted them into this crazy place where everybody loved Taking Back Sunday. And I know there's some people out there. I know some people personally. They keep saying, I've never listened to Taking Back Sunday. I don't like them, this and that. Which you're lying because
I
I'm
don't
telling.
think everybody too, especially if you weren't around during those times, is that there was like big heavy duty, like you were into brand new or you were into
Oh my
Taking Back
God.
Sunday,
So,
but also John Nolan, when he left, he created a band called Stray Light
oh my
Run.
God, I love Stray Light Run. Don't even get me started on that
Yeah.
band. I love that. See, and like at the end of the day, it was a little bit of a blessing, right? And you're totally right because my friend Jason, if he's listening, he gets really, really mad at me because back then when we became friends, he was very TBS and I was brand new. But I love Taking Back Sunday too. And we would
Yeah.
always argue. And he's like, they're better. I'm like, dude, relax. Like you can like both
I
or
was
you
gonna say, I'm
cannot.
like, even
Like,
if they were all fighting, who cares? Like,
right.
I
Like
liked every one of them, and
right.
I thought it was
See,
silly when people fought, but
oh my God, same. And I know there's people that have said like, oh, I didn't listen to Taking Back Sunday. Oh, it wasn't for me. No, they were everywhere. This band was
yeah.
everywhere. No way you escaped them. If you were part of the scene, part of this Warped Tour, I know you want to be cool and say you did not listen to them, and that's cool. But this band made such an impact that again, we are still talking about them, and specifically this time frame. You got to remember this time frame. And even though I haven't admittedly listened to them, a lot of their new releases, it's just not for me.
Yeah.
Very proud and happy for them. They're still going, but it's just not for me. But there's no way you could escape this band. This band was everywhere. And like you said, whether you listen to them or not, it was the biggest feud ever, brand new and
Yeah,
Taking Back
it was a big
Sunday.
deal.
And then the
It was
John
a
Nolan. Why did
big deal.
John Nolan leave? And then like
Oh
you got
yeah.
beautiful Straight Light Run, which anyone listening that does not know,
Yeah, I was gonna say
please
if you
go
don't know
listen to
Straight
Straight Light
Light
Run.
Run, go check them out. There's a song called Oh my gosh, what's it called? Extra. I can't even say the word. Uh, Extradental Crisis
No,
on prom night.
existentialism on prom night.
Thank you. I'm
It's
like,
a
I can't say the word,
me either,
but
Justine.
that
I don't know how I
song
just
is
did that.
beautiful. It's a different vibe than
Yeah,
Taking Back Sunny, which is another reason why it'd be really silly to compare. But
yeah, but
it's very beautiful songs.
oh my
But
God.
it's really funny because I remember one time in particular, I was at a brand new show and there's this girl in front of me just talking about like the whole controversy and like I don't like Taking Back Sunday. Like I know what they did. And like it was just like all this like
Hey,
weird
I had
discourse. And I was just like, who cares? Just listen to music. Like
so
quit being weird about it. Like
as much as I want to say not be weird, I was that kid at a TBS show. I would wear the mics are for singing, not swinging, just brand new sweatshirt that I had. So as much as I want to sit here and say, "Oh, don't be that way," I was that way, and I don't care. but and I totally did, and I love that
I
sweater.
mean, I think we've all dealt with some kind of discourse in our younger years when it comes to bands like Backstreet Boys against NSYNC and,
Oh yeah, don't even get me started,
Christina versus
guys.
Britney. Christina versus Britney. There's always going to be this weird discourse between bands and singers that sometimes there's not even any validity in it. It's just like what the fans have decided is a huge discourse sometimes.
Oh,
But like it happens. But I just remember just like standing there. I was like, what brought that up? Because I think it was like past the main discourse even. And I was
mhm.
like, why are you
Yeah,
still arguing
right.
about this?
Oh, 100%. Anytime I would say I would see brand new, like my friends would always say, oh, if they were Taking Back Sunday, I was like, oh, guys, come on. But no. So yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like you could not escape this band, even if you say you definitely heard at least one song. And whether you liked it or not, that's whatever. But I felt like with this Where You Want to Be record, they had a lot to prove. And I think they like surpassed that. I mean, my
Yeah.
standout tracks, I gotta go Bonus Mosh Part 2,
Mhm.
top 10 Taking Back Sunday song. A Decade Under the Influence. This one again was just the video that they had where that's like wrapping around Adam and just the moments and again where Adam's like, I just, I got a bad feeling about this. And again, that was just quoted on everyone's like little away message or whatever. And I just think this song could not escape you that summer. And I still go back to it a lot. And I love the slower pace on this one too, the slower pace songs. And they have This Photograph is Proof, The Union, New American Classic, and then 180 by Summer, which is literally my top three Taking Back Sunday songs of all time. And I felt this way for years. I still do. And especially now, again, this is where everyone's like, Lisa, just relax a little bit because I get a little like specific. But this is just at a minute 55 of 180 by Summer. There's a time when this song, it just takes me to another place. And I'll remember when I was a teenager because it's with Fred starting up and Adam chiming in. And it's just, if you're not sure what I'm talking about, go to a minute 55 till like 2:38. You will hear where it's so good. It gets me all these years later. And I think it just showed me that I'll always be that kid that'll be deeper in love with music where I'll find little things like that and moments in the songs. And it's not necessarily a big lyric or anything, but it's just how they slow down and then it ramps up. And it just is like, it's so good. Like I'm telling you right now, whatever you're doing after this, even stop this episode, go to a minute 55 of 180 by Summer and just go to that part. It is so, so good. And I think that's what set Taking Back Sunday apart and made me be like, okay, they're more talented than just tell other friends. Um, Little Devotional. I loved Adam's vocals on here, and it just always one of my favorites. Slow Dance on the Inside. I guess maybe I just listed every song on here, but I don't care. This record is one of my all-time favorites. And again, I stand it truly meant so much in this era, in this time. And I really wish they would pull this one out instead of Tell All Your Friends on the When We Were Young or any little tour, because we've seen that record so many times. And I just let's have a Where You Want to Be tour. Let's do it, guys. If any of you are listening to this somehow, I don't know how, but Let's Get a Where You Want to Be tour. I Will Be There, front and center. I just think any sophomore record, and I just think of any sophomore record that you just had to have this massive moment, and Taking Back Sunday did. And that's my spiel. Go listen to this record. That's all I'm going to say. And Justine, I got to know your take on this record.
To go on again about like the weird like discourse you were getting for liking this album the most, like
Mhm.
it, you can tell like quality wise too, the sound is more perfected on this one.
Yes.
And say what you want, like, okay, I personally absolutely adored the debut album. Okay, I
Mhm.
do. And the reason why I got this one is because somebody gave me a copy of it because they knew I loved Tell All Your Friends so much. And even though how much I loved that first one, you can tell like this one was definitely thought of better for quality and everything. And
Yeah.
so it's weird to me that anybody would try to say that this album's not that great because it's silly.
They have. I don't know why. I'm
I
like,
don't know
dude,
why
like
they were
listen to
giving
the
it so much
record and then
crap.
come back to me.
Listen to them side by side. You
Yes.
can love them both, but like if you're really like listening to them both, this one, the sound is more perfected. And I absolutely adore the first one. Okay. Trust me, I do. That's when I jumped onto TBS was for
Right.
Tell All Your Friends, but this album is more perfected. So I'm just saying, like, I just
Yeah.
feel
I'm
like
glad you
you're being
understand me.
silly trying to like fight so hard on it. It's like,
Dude.
you can, it's totally fine to like, be like, okay, I think this one's definitely made a little better. Okay, that doesn't mean you're completely talking shit on Tell All Your
No.
Friends.
I
It's
loved that record. I would die. I
yeah,
literally went to the 10 year of Tell All Your Friends, everything. Love that record. That is what made me fall in love with them, much like yourself. Like it made me fall in love with them. But I was being real. Like musically,
yeah.
everything just it was just massive
It's better
record.
because it's their second record and they
Yeah.
they aimed to make it better, and I'm sorry, but quality wise they did.
See?
The sound is more perfected. And again, like this is just another one of those albums where all the songs as a whole are very good, and I
Mhm.
feel like it's just, again, like it doesn't matter where you entered the story of TBS. Okay, you can still realize that this album was made a little better. And I really love Tell All Your Friends, but that's the truth. This one was made a little better, you know? But yeah, so somebody gave me a copy of this. So because they knew how much I liked Tell All Your Friends. And like I said, this is another one where just every song is wonderful and perfect. And for me though, again, of course, like you hit, the songs that I obviously gravitated towards the most. Bonus Mosh Pit Part
Mhm.
2. The line, well, it's love, make it hurt.
Oh, it's so
Anybody
good.
who has
It's
dealt with toxic relationships and friendships, one after another, can relate to that line.
yeah.
My other favorite has to be Decade Under the Influence, kind of for the same similar reason, with like the line of I thought it through, and um my worst brings out the best in you. So kind of the same thing, like toxic relationships and toxic friendships. They love when you're at your worst moments, and that just makes them happy. And I gravitated towards those as somebody that can't hold that still can't really hold my friendships. As somebody that was with, you know, um, for me, like if I think about my younger years when it comes to boyfriends, like they were toxic in the way of those are typical teenage boys, but like it was still a little toxic. You know what I mean? And then an
Mhm.
abusive relationship, and now I'm finally in something healthy, but like it's very relatable. And all these songs on this album, they're done beautifully. And if if you are still trying to say that this album is not good in comparison to the first,
Oh,
I think you need to go back and listen to it
dude.
now that you're
Oh,
older.
yes. I could go on literally leading up to this, I've been listening to this like over and over again, and just it's even better than I was like praising for years. Like it's
Mhm.
oh my God, like I
I
can
think now as an adult, looking back on these situations like I described, especially, and knowing for what they were, and then listening to this album, I think
Mhm.
might make you understand this album a little bit better.
Yeah. Uh, oh, and even like you saying some of those lyrics and listening back, it makes sense because with the departure of Will and John from the
Yeah.
band, that there was a lot of turmoil and there was a lot of things, and you hear it in the lyrics. And whether that's
Yeah.
directly what they're talking about, I don't know. Of
Yeah.
course, I
I'm
don't know them
curious.
personally,
It could be. I
but
mean, who knows?
yeah, and like I think it really catapulted Adam Lazzara as a vocalist out there.
Yeah.
I think it really
I,
made them even more massive because I think even people that didn't like Tell All Your Friends, liked this record and were
yeah.
like, okay, they're more mature. But I loved them both. But there's something special about this record, and I I still go back to it. And
But also, I think too, if your favorite album happens to be the third record, you wouldn't have that without this album.
yes, oh, I'm so glad you brought that up because I felt like this one
You wouldn't get
really
Make Damn Sure
no.
without this album.
Exactly. And I think about every record they did, and then even New Again that came later, which I loved, Matt Fozzy forever. But I think that you would not have gotten that
Yeah.
sound. And Louder Now is another record that was so like just massive and good. I think this is what led them on the path they did. It took them from like whatever you wanted to call them, whether it was like emo, you couldn't even call them pop punk. I don't even know what you could have called them back with Tell All Your Friends, but like you take that and then what they sounded on this record, Where You Want to Be, and you're absolutely right. I was going to bring that
Mhm.
up that you would not have gotten Make Damn Sure
Yeah.
without what they did on this record. 1,000%. Like, and now I got to go listen to Make Damn Sure after this because I love that song too.
Yeah.
But like, I just I love all these records. I really do. And I think again, if you're going to put some Mount Rushmore of the era, any of these records would be on there. I mean, I'm going to go Three Cheers and this one, Where You Want to Be, over the used. But I
Mhm.
think that it's still important. But I just so many massive records and just what a
Yeah.
time. What a
So
time.
we'll have more to talk about for the
Oh my
next
God.
episode
I
for
can't
sure.
wait. I can't wait. And like I bought something really, really cool for like a cool promo that I personally can't wait to do. And I have to show Justine that I got it today. I'm not going to tell anybody because I got something really cool. Um and yeah, I mean, I'm excited to talk about these records. And it's exciting to go back to that time and see they mean so much still. And they're so special. And it truly just talks about the time in this era and how when people go, oh, it's not a phase. But it really wasn't because like it's just so important to us, whether it was like what we loved about them, moments we made, like memories. These records have literally stood the test of time. And new people are now discovering them, younger people than
Mhm.
us.
Which I love personally.
I
I
loved it
love
too.
that the younger crowds are getting gravitated towards these. And again, it's funny because like you mentioned earlier, it's like we were made fun of for liking this music.
Yeah.
We were not liked for liking this
No,
music. Like there really wasn't a lot of emo kids in my hometown. Like I
there were a
said,
lot in mine.
I think I've mentioned prior, like because well you also have to think too because you were closer to a city and I
Hmm.
was from a really small town
Yeah,
in
true.
the middle of nowhere, which I would consider like hillbilly kind of like town. And so like there was only me and like probably a few other kids, and I don't really think a lot of kids liked MCR in my town until later on. I remember having them on like my binders and stuff, and people thought like those guys look pretty weird. Like,
Well, they
and I'm just
were. No,
like,
I'm just
all
kidding.
right. I was like, that's probably why I like him. I mean, look at me. It's just,
Like,
which makes sense because if you would see me in high school back then, you're like, oh yeah, that
Oh
makes
my God,
sense.
I gotta repost
But
your emo photo that you sent me that I posted for emo day with the stripes. Like,
oh my
I
gosh,
need to post that again.
I probably have a couple more I could send you too.
Good.
But yeah, it's so funny because I don't think, because you have these kids now that are getting into it and they're like, man, I wish I could be back, like around
Hmm.
back then. And like, no, you don't, because
Yeah, it would.
people really didn't get it.
No,
Like
and like the one good thing
most people
about
didn't
it,
get it.
the one good thing was the shows were cheaper. You could see smaller
Yeah.
venues. And I think that's what's so special about this era is that we were able to see these bands in such a small capacity.
Well,
And now you're
also,
not going to
like
get that.
with Warped Tour, we had the likelihood of meeting our bands more,
Oh yeah.
which again, in turn, was a little bad for the females, unfortunately, for
100.
certain
Hmm.
situations.
Yep. I've talked about that.
However, but I mean, however, though, you don't have that so much anymore unless you're
No.
paying for a like those VIP packages now that cost a lot of money, or um, by chance you happen to see them outside their bus, which doesn't happen much anymore because
No.
like they tend to, hermit in their, designated areas anymore. And that does kind of make me a little sad, for kids today, because like there's definitely nothing um better than being able, even if you feel like you sound like a complete idiot talking to them about how much you love them and what they've done to you, they don't really get that anymore. And that kind of makes me sad, a little bit. But I, so like certain aspects, I get why you wish you were back then, but at the same time, it wasn't as collectively accepted as it is now. But I
No.
do love seeing all these bands getting their dues all
Hmm.
this time later, and these kids getting it and loving the music. And, and I think that's given all these bands from back then just another, like, dose of like, oh, look, I really did make something great, and they can kind of revive themselves a little more and get themselves back out there, because some of them never left,
Hmm.
you
Well,
know?
yeah, well, that's we talk about that. The used.
Yeah.
The used never
They've
has left.
never stopped.
They've never stopped. They've
Yeah.
kept going and so Taking Back Sunday is another one of them too.
Yep. Taking Back
And
Sunday and oh gosh, who else? Well, Under Oath stopped for a little while and they started coming back.
and
Um,
then I know kind of what you're talking about right now, Yellow Card. I mean, they left,
yeah,
but they
Yellow
kind of
Card.
felt that same thing you're talking about where they were on Riot Fest and the crowd, everything.
Excited there. I was glad I was there
It
whenever they were there.
and
And
that's why they
yeah,
now are doing everything they're doing because they were like that gave them what you just said. Like that gave them
yeah,
like, wow, we did something really cool with Ocean Avenue. Let's see what else we can do. And I think that's really,
yeah.
really cool.
And I think it's wonderful because it's really just giving these people more motivation to keep going or to come back and
Hmm.
realize that they did make an impact and they
Yeah.
didn't think they did. Because I'm sure so many of these bands didn't think they were that big of a deal for some people, and as much as we want to like not pretend like we're that old, but like a lot of these kids come from parents that were emo. And the reason
Mhm.
why they've gravitated towards this is because of what they heard of from their parents and their parents' experiences. And I just love that.
I do too. I do. I see more and more of that. I think that's the coolest thing. And I think it's even cool because like G's brothers, like in that same right where he missed the curve of a lot of these bands when they were really, really popular. And now he gets to go see them now. And he's like, I want to go see this band, Lisa. And I'm like, yeah, I've already seen them too many times. And no offense, like the ticket price, like I don't want to be like that, but it's like, but I think that's what's
But
so
it's also
cool.
funny too that I've noticed too in like the age groups too of emo. Like, so I'm a huge fan of Johnny Gilbert and Jake Weber. Okay.
Guy,
And
Justine.
it's really funny because to see what that age group, because they're 10 years younger, okay, and to see what emo they gravitated towards, but the ones that they didn't get into, I'm like, really? That's
Hmm.
interesting, because there's some
Well,
of it's like, what? And I thought I'm like, that's so funny. But I'm like, but they're looking at it from a different year group of emo. And I wasn't like Never Shout Never. I was not into that band.
Me either.
That was well past my
Oh,
like emo time frame. And it's really interesting to see what emo hit for certain generations and then what is hitting now with the even younger generation that is getting into it, whether they like more of the early emo phases or the later emo phases, or they like a combination.
well,
I love all of that.
a lot of them, it's funny you brought Never Shot Never. I'm probably, I don't want to say I'm going to get canceled, but this is the ones where people are going to be like, no, Lisa, album and a band I never could get into.
I
Just
never did
not,
either.
it is just not my jam, is
But
Mayday Parade.
I think that was like generational though, because I didn't get into those either. And again, like, I know, I'm sorry, name dropping Johnny Gilbert again, but like that like brings me to like see how different emo is depending on your generation. Because like by that time for those bands, like we were all kind of like we might have still liked our emo groups and stuff, but like we didn't really jump into any of the newer stuff at that point.
No, like everybody swears by Mayday Parade, and that's a band
Yeah,
I
I
cannot, not
never got into them.
I could never. It just, to me, and again, this is where I'm going to lose people, and please do not attack me. It kind of reminded me of sad boy guitar rock, and I was not a sad boy.
And
And
I think that, I mean, like, you know what I mean? Again, it's generational, and there's
you're
nothing wrong with
right,
that. If that those
right.
are emo bands you gravitate towards, that's totally fine.
Exactly. I'm
But
not, no hate, but
I think it just goes to show, like different phases in your life. By that
Mhm.
time, like, oh gosh, like what,
20s.
like 2015? Was it 2015? Those times when that kind of stuff came out, or was it even earlier than that?
I think it was earlier than that
It might
because
have been
people
earlier than
are
that.
talking
I
about,
lose track of time, everybody.
yeah,
Sorry about that. But
yeah.
like even so, it's like depending on what age you are and like what kind of crowds you run in depends on what emo like versions you tend to gravitate
Okay,
toward.
so real quick, obviously, Mayday Parade, A Lesson in Romantics, that was 2007. So you're right.
Okay.
We
We were at
were,
that would have been college age for me.
yeah, that would have been, yeah, same here. I was at Columbia, I was at art school.
Yeah.
So like it makes sense. And I think you're right. You touched on that. Like that's really, really cool that there's so many different parts of
But
that. And I
from
think,
what I've heard too, most of the kids that got into those bands, it was like middle school age for them.
yeah.
So that I think in turn makes sense. Like it might not have pulled us in, but it did for the next generation of emo
So it's
kids.
funny you bring that up too, because obviously a friend of mine, Brian, which we shared the same birthday, and he's the host, a co-host of Emo Social Club, which everybody go check out if you want to listen to that. But he brought that up because they covered Mayday Parade, and he brought that up that at the time it kind of missed him, and he's my
Yeah.
age, so we literally, you're right, like it missed us, missed the curve. But then going back, and he was someone that said I need to go back and listen to Mayday Parade, and maybe I'll like, oh, okay, maybe I just missed the curve and didn't get it. It's not that it's a bad record. It just,
Yeah.
again, anyone listening that likes Mayday Parade, that's amazing. I know they're such a staple for so many people, but I'm just like, but again, like there's probably records I talk about. Like this
Yeah.
podcast is named
There's
after the band North Star, and there's a record. I tell people that they have no idea who North Star is. They have no idea what the hell I'm talking about. They were part of the emo wave. They weren't as big, but
yeah.
North Star, Is This Thing Loaded? If you listen to that song, Is This Thing Loaded, on their record, there's a lyric that says stereotherapy heals my lesions. That is where stereotherapy came from. So, another record that people lost, but every time I talk about that, younger kids have no idea what the hell I'm talking about.
Oh yeah. Well, and that's what's so funny is like there's so many like emo bands that didn't get as big that a lot of us listened to back in the day that like anybody getting into emo now or got into it in the later years wouldn't know about. And we know it because of the Warped Tour days where we were able
Yes.
to see some smaller emo bands that didn't get as big, but still kind of had their, their
Oh my
draw
God.
in for our age group. But I just love to see just even in that, like the difference, like only like how many years difference like makes, you know what I mean? And
Mm-hmm.
I just love seeing like what the later emos liked in comparison of after all these albums that we love and grew up on, like what ones hit for them still and like what really didn't hit for them as much. And it's just interesting. I've just always been like very interested in what the different generations, like what works with them.
Yeah. So,
And
I
it's
mean,
going to be different. And it's going to be like, you know, sometimes it's going to be a mix. Sometimes it's going to be one or the other. And I love to see that. And I just love anything that these younger kids are willing to look into. And a lot of them that are getting into it now that are younger, they want to know like maybe some of these emo bands that they aren't going to find out about just by the massive mainstream of it all, you know?
well, and,
And
and it's funny you bring that up because even like I think about us talking about these records, right? 9 times out of 10, the majority of the younger crowd goes to the Black Parade. They
yep,
go to the latest TBS record. They don't go to this one where and they talk about the used records that are coming out recently. They don't talk about, I mean, yes, maybe they go back and listen, but these
yeah,
records are really important to us in our age group where the other guys, they are still the current stuff where I've slept on the current stuff of these bands
yeah.
100%. So I think that is so.
But that still makes me kind of happy to know that that can what they're pumping out that they haven't stopped pumping out albums for is hitting the new generations more,
Mhm.
which is great because that means like they're still making like waves with
Yeah.
these newer
Oh,
kids
they
and they don't
are.
even have to go back to the old ones. Like that's still
We're
fantastic and wonderful.
we're the age group that wants them to go back to the old shit.
We're old and we want
Uh,
to listen to what we
oh
know.
God, don't talk. So, and two, like just to, say, well, we're gonna have another episode of the ones we missed. And again, if you liked any of this stuff, let us know which ones were your favorites, what you agree on, what you disagree on. But also something I posted too, I would love, love, love. It's not about the numbers. It's just, I want to get us into the algorithm because I've seen when we push the algorithm, people find our show and they enjoy it. This is my birthday month, people. All right. We are here. I would love to hit 200 subscribers on all the platforms, like all together, total. So all you got to do is follow our show, guys. And
Mhm.
listen, we don't bombard you with
Share it,
stuff. You
you
just,
know,
yeah,
share it
share
with
it.
your friends,
You
share it on
have,
your social media. It'd be
you
great.
have a little thing that'll just say, "Hey, there's an episode," and who knows, maybe you'll like it. Again, it's not about the numbers. I hate pushing it, but it would just be really cool to see that because I see when we push the algorithm, there's friends on my socials that are like, "Lisa, I had no idea you had a podcast. How the hell do you like?"
Mhm.
But again, the algorithm wasn't pushing me toward you, and I've
Yeah.
seen that, and I see the algorithm pushes us towards not my followers. So if we could maybe try to get that, that would just really mean a lot to us because we really believe in this podcast and we work really hard on it. And yes, so that would be a really cool goal. We're almost there, and it would be really cool to get there. So yes. And again, it's not like, oh, subscribe, give us the clout. No, it's not about that. By now, you know. But it would just really mean a lot. And you can follow us on any social media again, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, even though it's dead. We are at stereo.therapy, stereo period therapy. And we will see you next time with a wonderful episode, a wonderful interview by someone. I'm really excited to talk to her. We talked to her this week, so I can't wait to post that. But we will see you guys. And then we'll come back with the other 20-year ones because it'll be a lot of fun. But we will see you guys next time. And we can't wait to share that. And appreciate you guys all listening to this as always. And oh gosh, I can't believe it's February still. Oh my God. But where's this time gone since we started this new year? But we will see you guys next time, bright and early, next Tuesday. All right. Bye, guys.